Welcome to another episode of Ask Father, brought to you by the Fatima Center. I'm Father Albert, a traditional Dominican priest, and this is the question that's posed today. A question from Brian Cody. What happens to the souls of people who commit suicide? Well, obviously we cannot never say what happens to the soul of someone who dies. That's a mystery between God and the soul. We can obviously first, though, recall the teaching of the Church about suicide, that it's murder, because it's the taking of a human life. The fact that someone takes his own life doesn't change that. God is the one who gives life. He gave it to us. We didn't give it to ourselves, so we can't take it away ourselves. God is the author of life. It belongs to Him, so we don't have the right to take it away. So that's why it's a mortal sin to commit suicide. But the subjective guilt of someone who commits suicide, well, only God knows. Often these people are in such a state of mind that they don't know really what they're doing, or at least they're not responsible for what they're doing. So only God can judge their subjective guilt. The Church has traditionally punished suicide by forbidding there to be a public funeral mass for the funeral of someone who commits suicide. Not to punish the person himself, because that's it's too late for that. It's not the person himself who's going to be punished. It's simply for the common good to make clear to everyone the gravity of the sin involved in suicide. And it's an important thing to do that, because in a lot of cultures, suicide is considered to be something quite normal. They say, for example, in Japan, that people
In Our Lady of Fatima, God has provided the only solution.
He wills to establish in the world devotion to His Mother's Immaculate Heart.
To accomplish this, she has explicitly requested the consecration of Russia by the Pope in union with all the world's Catholic bishops,
and the communion of reparations is practiced within the first Saturday devotion.
Yet we in turn stand on the verge of 100 years of disobedience to her requests.
To help reverse this trend and gain graces for Russia's consecration,
the Fatima Center is preparing a unique and wonderful spiritual bouquet for Our Lady.
We wish to offer her 100,000 First Saturdays by the 100th anniversary of her request, December 10th, 2025.
We need every Catholic to join and spread this First Saturday challenge.
May this offering be pleasing to our Lord and Our Lady, and help merit the graces needed for the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
do it all the time. It's just something that people do, and there's nothing. It's not considered to be necessarily something wrong. The Church wants to make us recognize the fact that it's a grievous sin in itself. So for that reason, she punishes this sin by refusing to have a funeral celebrated publicly for someone who's committed suicide. But that doesn't mean necessarily that the Church is saying that the person is not going to be accepted by God if they didn't really know what they were doing or repented for what they had done, because sometimes, depending on the manner in which suicide is committed, it's quite possible that someone, after having done something that would lead to their death, repents of it. There's a famous example of the Curie of Ars telling this woman whose husband had jumped off a bridge, and she was despairing for his salvation, and he told her that no, he had performed an act of contrition before he died, and so that he had been saved. So we can really never say what happens to these souls of people who commit suicide. To answer the question, we don't know. So I invite you to send your questions to the Fatima Center. Please also consider making a donation to help us make the message of Fatima, the full message of Fatima, better known. God bless you.